right, so I'm going to fix up that backyard for you. Sound?
All right, we are live. Hello, welcome to the Purple Territory pregame radio show. My name is Tyler Haig. I will be your host today, and I am joined by Mr. Jordan Hawthorne. How's it going, my friend?
It is going well.
And we are also joined by Mr. Giotto Troia. How are you, good sir?
Doing great.
So the Vikings obviously have a game coming up here against the Detroit Lions. Everything in the NFC North is kind of clumped together, and the Vikings aren't looking as strong as maybe we once anticipated they would. Do you think that this is a must-win game? I guess, Jordan, we'll start with you. Do you think this is a must-win game for the Vikings?
So I hate talking about must-win games because
I agree
feel
completely.
like it's only like halfway through the season, but at the same time, I think since our next 3 games are division games, I think our next 3 games are must-win games. I think the next 3 weeks we're going to get a very clear picture of who's going to win this division because right now it's so congested. The winner of today's game, all of a sudden they're sitting in second place, and if Chicago loses, then they're tied for second. Oh, Chicago has a half game. I don't know how the ties work and stuff.
Yeah, the ties make it difficult.
It does, but yeah. So I'm going to go with it is a must-win because it's a division game against a division opponent, and it's gonna go a long way in deciding who wins the division.
For sure. Gio, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a must-win. Not only the division thing, but now every team in the NFC North is the Vikings going into a bye week need to sort of pull in ahead because that'll be the last bye week in the division. So from there on out, it's week after week grinding. And so you got to pull out as many division wins as possible. Lions already beat the Packers. They showed the Patriots what's up. So, and everybody's playing the Patriots this year as well. So there's a lot of tough opponents left on the schedule. So they need this win from a lot of different perspectives, but mainly because it is so clumped together. You need to create separation when it's available.
Definitely. Yeah. And I agree with you, Jordan, that I hate using the term must win, but Giotto, you nailed it. If you look ahead at what they have coming up on this schedule, those teams most likely are not going to be getting worse. They'll be getting better as the season progresses. Mm-hmm. This is all of a sudden looking like one of your most winnable games in the foreseeable future here. So I think you do have to, if you're the Vikings, you have to get a win here. Doing that will be a little bit more difficult this week because they will be without the services of, several starters, bar Compton, but most notably, Diggs will not be playing this week. Do we think that this is going to affect Adam Thielen's production enough to stop the streak? Who do we start with Jordan last time? So let's start with Giotto. Do you think that streak ends today?
I don't think the streak ends. Mainly because they're going to. He's so good at running routes. I've said it so many times, but he's so clean at running routes. He can create separation, but I think as soon as he catches that ball, they'll be all over him. And so I think that he gets catches, not too much yards after the catch, though. And that running game right now for the Vikings, I don't know how much it can take away from coverage on the pass because with Dalvin Cook not healthy, playing on a snap count, obviously Diggs not there, but Latavius Murray not really showing too much in terms of being able to be a dominant force in the backfield. Who else you got? Treadwell, Robinson.
That's pretty much it. Yeah, that's the end of the list, isn't it?
That's it. So, and Rudolph, obviously. But as far as it goes, I think that they're going to be able to shut down Thielen in terms of yards after the catch. But he'll get his 100.
Okay. Jordan, what do you think? Does the streak stop today?
I just have to point out, Gio, I get you not pointing out Chad Beebe, but Tyler, I'm so upset that you didn't bring up that Chad Beebe's probably going to get some playing time.
Yeah.
He is,
preseason legend.
I'm trying to play it cool with the Beebe thing because I'm so excited about it. I'm like retweeting Chad Beebe fan club tweets, and like I'm very excited. I was gonna save it for a little bit later, but yeah, Chad Beebe might get some run today. Yes, thank you for
That completely
acknowledging
spaced on me too. I should have brought that up. I'm
it.
sorry.
For sure, I can't believe it took this long. Honestly, it's 5 minutes in.
If you look at our wide receivers, I mean, obviously Treadwell will be in the game some, but we might see like our wide receivers might kind of look like New England today. We might have like, Adam Thielen, Brandon Zylstra, Chad Beebe, like a bunch of small white dudes. But overall, I think that Diggs being out, I think it will. I don't want to say the streak's going to end, but that's just because I've said it's going to end like the past 3 weeks. So it would be fitting that he broke Megatron's record against the Lions. So I think the production is going to go down a little bit, but I feel like he's going to get a big play. I feel like it's going to happen on like some big like screen that he's going to take to the house for like 70 yards or something. Like I feel like he hasn't had that big moment yet this season, and I think that's coming today. So I think he's going to get the 9 games with 100 yards off of that big like splashy play. Like he had that big screen pass, so it was a slant against Carolina last year.
Yep.
So I think he's going to have a play like that today. But I do think the run game is going to step up, even if Dalvin. I wish they wouldn't have even played Dalvin, but Latavius has looked good. Last week we kind of had to abandon the run game because of we were down by 17 at one point.
Yeah, the scoreboard situation. Yeah,
absolutely. But Latavius against the Jets and against Arizona, he looked pretty good. He had some pretty decent days, and he was scoring touchdowns. So I think that might take some pressure off of Thielen, and he might be able to get a little bit more separation, and maybe the focus will be shifted on stopping Latavius and Dalvin instead of just stopping Adam Thielen.
Definitely. That's kind of my biggest concern about this streak continuing is that, Giotto, you kind of touched on it a little bit, was they just don't really have many other weapons. And if that run game doesn't get going early, all of a sudden it's going to be the like Randy ratio, only it's going to be Adam Thielen. And I don't think that necessarily bodes well for his total yard production. I think Thielen will definitely be a big part of the offense. I don't think you can really argue that. I think he'll have to be a big part of the offense with Diggs out. But if they can get a little bit from their running game and they can loosen up a little bit and then get some separation for him, I think that he could continue the streak. But honestly, it's hard for me to assume that the running game is going to do enough for the defense to be able to focus elsewhere. Because if they can focus everything on Thielen, I don't think he's going to be able to be as productive as a 100-yard game needs him to be. So, but I don't know. We'll see. I sure hope. I think it would be poetic and wonderful if he broke that streak in Detroit against the Lions. But we'll see. Moving on, kind of shifting a little bit to the Lions themselves. They obviously had just gotten rid of, or traded, I guess is maybe a better way to put it, traded Golden Tate. What does Stafford do going forward, and do they have enough from a weapons standpoint at wide receiver to be successful? And because they are still in the hunt for this division. And do they have enough now to be contenders in this division? Let's start with Jordan.
So long term, I don't think they do. I think that they do lack weapons, even though the running game has looked good this season. But I liked them getting rid of Golden Tate. He was gonna ask for a mega contract at the end of the season. And I really like Kenny Golladay. I think Golladay is a solid, very solid. He's super tall. He's a good deep threat. So I like Kenny Golladay in their offense. So I liked the Golden Tate deal that they made. So I think that they're just lacking. Similar, I think that's one of the Vikings' downfalls is besides Diggs and Thielen, I mean, who's our wide receiver 3? And now the Lions kind of have that same issue where it's like, who do they throw to besides Malvin Jones or Kenny Golladay? They kind of put themselves in a bad spot, but I understand why they did it. So I don't think they'll necessarily contend those yet.
Yeah, I think the return makes it a pretty understandable move from Detroit's part. But what do you think, Giotto?
So I'll tell you who their number 3 guy is. It's Brandon Powell. He was basically groomed by Golden Tate over the last year to be that slot guy and operate in the same part of the field as Golden Tate did. He was even, Golden Tate even said that Brandon Powell is better than Golden Tate was at his age, which isn't saying much. I mean, he's like a second-year player, I'm pretty sure. But if he learned from one of the better possession receivers of all time in Golden Tate, I have no doubt that he can at least be serviceable in the offense. And the other guy is TJ Jones, who has played some this year. But I don't think that he's the next guy up. I think it's really going to be Brandon Powell and Kerryon Johnson taking some of that, some of those extra receptions that have gone his way or that have gone to Golden Tate in the past. So they're going to ease Brandon Powell in, but I think over the next 4 or 5 games, you're going to see him really take control and be that possession type receiver that Golden Tate was. Other than that, I mean, obviously you've got Kenny Galladay and MJJ, Marvin Jones Jr. that, they're very easily going to be the 1 and 2 guys. Kenny Galladay, Minitron, I'm pretty sure everybody calls him. He's basically Calvin Johnson 2.0, a little bit smaller, but same guy who can stretch the field, deep threat, red zone monster. So that's sort of just how it affects it. I think everybody's going to get a little bit more share. And I like the trade by the Detroit Lions. They're still in the mix. And if they felt comfortable getting rid of Golden Tate, I think clearly they feel pretty comfortable about Brandon Powell and the ability for Kerryon Johnson to maybe get more touches out of the passing game as well. So that's just sort of my thoughts on it. But yeah, Brandon Powell is a guy to keep an eye on.
Definitely. I was going to say, do you think that because of, like, if everybody is stepping into these roles, do you think that Detroit still has a chance in this division? Do you think they can get that same kind of production out of those guys? Like, are we just going to assume that this is going to be a dogfight in the NFC North this season?
I think so. I think that it's going to be a really close race up until the very bitter end. And I think that the Bears might be the odd man out in this scenario. Khalil Mack has been injured. He's missed 2 games now. Who knows what exactly is aggravating him or, keeping him out of these games. He goes into every week. It seems questionable. And then, I mean, you've got Dalvin Cook, who's injured. I mean, if everybody on the Vikings was healthy, I'd say they'd run away with it. But everybody's hurting right now. And the Packers have dysfunctional coaching. So there's really nothing that keeps a team ahead of the pack in this division, in my opinion.
Yeah, and when you that's a great way to put it. When you boil it all down like that, you kind of look at Detroit, and it's like, they might be the least dysfunctional out of any of these teams. That might just give them a chance at winning this division just because they're the least screwed up out of anybody.
Yeah, a few years removed of going 0-16, and they're the least dysfunctional in that NFC North. Yeah,
unbelievable. And with a coach that was questioning work ethic at the beginning of the season, and who was they get destroyed in that opening game against the Jet, unbelievable.
Then going out and dominating the Patriots a couple weeks later. It's crazy.
It's so strange. Actually, let's talk about the Patriots a little bit, and I know we're kind of looking ahead a bit here, but for Detroit to beat the Patriots like that, and does that tell you more about where Detroit was at, where Detroit is at? How much do we fear the Patriots as, I guess, just NFL fans compared to Detroit, and maybe should those be a little bit closer? Jordan, do you think that maybe the Lions are better than we give them credit for, and the Patriots are maybe not as great as we give them credit for?
So I'll start with the Patriots question, and no, I think the Patriots are great. I think the past I think it's 5 weeks, they're dominating the NFL. They have the most points. They have the most points per game. Their defense is playing well. Tom Brady is playing almost at an MVP level. They're the Patriots. They are going to do what the Patriots do. And then the Lions, I wish it was us that got to play New England in what was it, week 2 or week 3?
Yeah, like that.
New England gets off to slow starts. It's just what they do.
Definitely.
So I would have loved to get to go beat up on New England while they're getting things going before they're actually New England, and then gotten a win. So I think the gap is still pretty wide, and I think the reason the Lions get so overlooked in this division is just they're kind of like the little brother at this point. And they have 3 older brothers. Like the Bears defense just looks so dominant, and Adam Thielen is so dominant, and Aaron Rodgers is maybe the best of all time, and then Matt Stafford he's okay. I feel like it's almost like the best player on their team. It's like, yeah, he's okay. And then the best player on everybody else's team, it's like, oh my God, they're so good. And
that's
so
a great point.
Don't get the kind of like how I think we were this way for 2 or 3 years, where it was like no one really talked about how good the Vikings were, and then all of a sudden it was like last season, oh my God, have you seen Xavier Rhodes and what he's capable of? And so I don't think Detroit gets like that media attention. I don't think they get hyped up as a good team, but I do think they're a good team, and they've never lost to us at home in US Bank Stadium. That's a fun stat. So they've been able to come into our building and beat us, and that's how division rivals are. You can't take them lightly, even if they're really bad. They're still going to give you a tough game because that's just how division games are. So I think Detroit's a good team this season. I think they could win it, the division.
Yeah, I was going to say specify what are they going to win? Giotto, do you think that we maybe give too much credit to the Patriots, or do you think that how close is that gap? Do you think?
I mean, again, sort of going off of what Jordan was saying, Tom Brady, best of all time, most rings ever. Bill Belichick, best coach ever. Yeah, I mean, they're always going to be seen as one of the main threats in the NFL to win not only, the AFC, but the Super Bowl. And so every time you play them, it's going to be tough, and that maybe as a team, we try to over prepare for them. But this year in particular, Gronk hasn't been his old self. He's caught 1 touchdown, I'm pretty sure, in the entire season, and that was like week 1.
Yep.
He's now got back and ankle issues. Sony Michel had a horrible knee injury last week, but somehow was able to bounce back and might play this week. Not exactly sure how that happened.
That's incredible.
Or maybe that was 2 weeks ago. Yeah, it was crazy.
If you saw, it looked like Teddy's injury.
I was going to say, it looked like his knee fell off.
You saw the video, and it's like, I mean, holy smokes! Like, I don't know how he could possibly come back from this season. And then, yes, last week he was questionable and
that's
ruled
crazy.
Out. So they are struggling with injuries, but James White is their number 1 receiver and number 1 running back on the season. Not only that, but number 1 receiving in touchdowns. So Tom Brady has his possession receiver, and actually he has 2 of them, Julian Edelman and James White. So they're so hard to scheme against because they can make anything work with any type of package they put out on the field. And I don't think that they're overrated. I think that they're rated just perfectly. I think that everyone schemes against them the way that they should, because they deserve the respect, because they can make anything work with any type of personnel they put out there. As for the Lions, I think they are underappreciated. Already talked about it a little bit, but they've got good weapons. None of them stand out as, oh my God, this is like the next coming of Aaron Rodgers or the next coming of, Adrian Peterson in his prime or anything like that. Speaking of AP, is he not in his prime? It seems like he is.
It's so crazy that he's doing what he's
the
doing.
Tom Brady of running backs.
Exactly. 33 years old, and he's number 5 in the league in rushing. And
you couldn't make it up.
It's 23 or 24. He's a decade older than everybody else on that top 5 list. But Kerryon Johnson, I mean, he's a very James White-esque, except he can also run through the tackles more efficiently than James White can. So, I mean, they have weapons of their own, and I think that they're definitely underrated. I think that they could win the division with a couple of games here or there that go their way, especially division games like this one that they have this week.
Yes.
And I don't think that the Vikings are necessarily a lock to win this one by any means.
Absolutely not. I completely agree with that. A great term I heard earlier this week about Detroit was they're really pesky. They're just a pesky team that's always going to be around. They're maybe not as great talent-wise as some of the other teams in the division, but they are always around. They're in most games. I mean, they got killed a couple of times, but in these division games, they're always competitive. They're always tough. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Detroit winds up doing in the long term, especially with Patricia. And it looks so rough early on, but he kind of seems to have gotten his whatever. Well, at least he's comfortable enough to be, yelling at journalists. So that's, I guess, a good sign from a Belichickian head coach, I guess.
Sit up straight when you're talking to me.
That was unbelievable. And here's the thing is, for that guy, it's like, really, dude, you with the hat and the jogging suit? Yeah. And you're telling him that he looks sloppy. Respect the process. Come on.
Who could forget the stupid pencil while he's holding a laminated play calling sheet?
Yeah,
it's just for show.
This is just what I carry behind my ear. I need one to carry it behind my ear. It's ridiculous. All right, let's do a little bit of kind of long-term loose predicting here. We're still a ways out. There's a lot of things can happen, a lot of injuries, et cetera, et cetera. But from where you're sitting now and what you've seen so far, who do you think takes the NFC North? Let's start with, I don't even know where we're at, what order we're in.
I think it's Gio.
Okay, let's go Gio.
All right. Well, I do have the upcoming 3 games in front of me right now for each NFC North team. So,
that's perfect.
Vikings at home versus the Lions. Then they're on bye, and then they've got at Bears and at home versus the Packers. That's 3 division games in a row over 4 weeks. And, I mean, the Bears are looking on the downside here. Packers I don't know. I'm really frustrated with them. I could see them potentially winning the next 3 games and sort of pulling out a really nice lead over a lot of the division. As far as the Packers go, Packers have a tough schedule. They're at Patriots versus the Dolphins, then at Seahawks. Not to mention the Rams last week. This is a really tough schedule that the Packers are in, but they really do end the season on a pretty light note in terms of the schedule. So if the Packers drop these 3 games, I'm not going to say that they're out of it, but they're looking pretty rough. And then obviously Bears at Bills this week versus Lions, and then versus the Vikings in week, 10, 11. If they don't get their defense back on track in terms of Khalil Mack coming back, then I don't know how much their offense can really keep them in the game. However, I did notice a nice sort of correlation between the Bears winning and the Bears losing this year, and that is when Jordan Howard is in the game and making a difference on the ground game, getting more than 15 touches, they win the game because they're able to control the clock. When Tariq Cohen is getting the most touches and basically Jordan Howard is not in the game controlling the clock, they lose games because if they score, they're not using up any clock. They're not creating that time of possession. And basically they sometimes go 3 and out because they're passing the ball a little bit more instead of ground and pound. So if the Bears utilize Jordan Howard more going forward, then I could see them, winning these next 3 games potentially, as opposed to continuing on that downside. And then the Lions, obviously, at Vikings, at Bears, and versus the Panthers. That's a pretty tough schedule, but they're underrated. Nobody's really scheming for them. They've beaten the Patriots, the Packers, and the Miami Dolphins this year, who started out 3-0. They're definitely underrated. They've won games they were supposed to lose and lost games they're supposed to win, though. So it's kind of confusing.
Which version are you going to get is the question.
Yeah. I think the best route to winning these next 3 games or 4 games in the next three of the 4 next games is the Vikings. And I think that they're going to come out on top after this 3 or 4 game stretch.
What do you think, Jordan? Who wins? Who takes the NFC North?
Man, I don't want to make a solid prediction, but I'm going to say the Vikings because I do think we're going to win the next 3 games. And I've been saying but probably about like a month now, once I saw this stretch of schedule. I think it was like right after the Bills game. I was like, you know what? Let's just wait and see how we look going into this Detroit game, and then the bye, and then Chicago and Green Bay. Because if we win these next 3 games, I think we win the division. And then if we go and beat the Patriots the week after we play Green Bay, I think the division is, I don't want to say a lock, but I think we would be on a roll. We would have like 3 statement wins against good teams. So I think we should be favored to win the division, because I think we're going to win 3 out of the next 4 and just kind of have a hold on it. But it wouldn't surprise me if it's not us. You have to give Green Bay their Aaron Rodgers ticket, because he's a magic man. I mean, he's something special. And then Khalil Mack is a magic man. I mean, whenever he gets hot, it's like that team just plays completely different. But whenever he's kind of been banged up now, so he's not playing as well, or he's not playing at all. And it's like, if you can neutralize him, I think you can expose the Bears a little bit. And I will say it until the day I die, Mitch Trubisky is not going to be a good NFL quarterback. He's probably going to be out of the league in 2 years. Like, I just don't like him. I don't know why. I don't think he's that good. So I think it's between the Vikings and Packers, and that's kind of what we knew it was going to be going into this year. And I think the NFC North is kind of revealing itself. I think Detroit's about to lose a bunch. I think Chicago's going to lose a game like that they shouldn't lose in these next 2 weeks. They have 2 kind of easy opponents, and I don't know. I think they're going to get like they're going to be the Vikings against the Bills today. Like, I think they're going to shoot themselves in the foot or something. Like, just something weird's going to happen. I don't know. It always seems to be the Vikings and the Packers recently, so I'm sticking with that, and I think we're going to come out on top again because I'm a Vikings fan and I'm optimistic.
Yeah, well, and that's definitely what I'm hoping for. But it looks to me like the Vikings seem to have the most talent in the division, and if everything goes the way it is, I guess, quote unquote, supposed to go, the Vikings should win. Everybody else should, fall to their mediocre records, and the Vikings should be able to, get to the 9-10 win area. But the more I watch of this team throughout this season, the harder it is for me to believe that that's going to happen. They just have too many issues with the offensive line, too many issues with like injuries to important players at this point. Although, granted, I will say the defense played exceptionally well in the previous game, with a lot of guys out. But if Griffin could come back, I think they could. If Griffin can return to form, I think he could be enough of a factor on the defense to kind of push them over the top. But man, it's the way it's going right now. It's just hard for me to believe that the Vikings are going to do anything to separate themselves. And we know enough about the Vikings to know that if there's no separation there and it's going to be close and we're going to play tight, important games, the Vikings historically find a way to screw that up, and they will not win the division. I think Detroit will win the division this year because I do think they're underrated. I think Detroit has a lot going for them, and I think that, I don't know if underestimate is the right word, but I feel like people are overlooking Detroit, and I think they have a lot, like you said, Gio, I think there are a lot of weapons on that team, and I think Stafford is more than capable of being productive enough to get them a bunch of wins. I hope the Vikings win the division, but from what I've seen, it's hard for me to believe that will take place. Let's do a little bit of, I guess we could do some like predictions, like some game predictions right now. Do you guys want to do that? Should we do, I can start with mine. I think the Vikings are going to win, and I think they're going to win a tight one. I think it's going to be, I'm going to go 21-17. 21-17. Like I said, I just am not a huge believer in this team anymore. I expected them to be a juggernaut, and I just am seeing a lot of mediocre play. I think they can get better. I think they can improve, but I think they need to win this game, and I just have such a tough time believing that they're going to play enough to make it a no-doubter. I hope they win it, but that's what I'm going to go with. Gio, you want to predict? What do you think?
31-27, Lions over the Vikings. I think that with Dalvin Cook being in but basically injured, and Latavius Murray not necessarily getting as many touches. So I saw actually a stat that Dalvin Cook basically has like 127 touches this year, and I don't know how many yards per carry or whatever. It was like 2 point something yards per carry, and if he's on a 20 snap count, chances are he'll probably get the ball about 14 times. He might get 25 yards. That's sort of a stat line that I saw today, and if that happens, then that's a useless 20 snaps, completely useless.
I agree. When
you could give it to a healthy Latavius Murray, or feed it downfield to one of your receivers or pass catchers. And if that's the case, then I think that they lose by probably a possession. Whether it's 4 or 3 or 7 or 6 or whatever it is.
Yep.
And that's just sort of disappointing. If they were smart, they would have kept Dalvin Cook out through the bye week so he can be fully healthy and come back and be a workhorse back. But they're not smart, and so they're not going to do that.
And they haven't been smart with him at all season. Like, why has this lasted so long? It's crazy to me. To me. Jordan, what is your prediction?
So I've told you guys before, I love a touch of theatrics in my games. I like the big dramatic things. I think we're gonna win like 27-20, and I think Detroit's gonna have 4th down and goal from like the 5, and they're gonna throw a fade to like the 6'7" Kenny Galladay, and who's gonna stop him? All of our defensive backs are small, not so fast. Holton Hill is 6'5", and he's going up and he's swatting the ball. I predicted on my podcast he's gonna I give out a game ball. I predicted he's getting the game ball on Sunday, on today, but I do think we're gonna win by probably a possession. I think that the Dalvin Cook stat, you got to remember what offensive line he has played with. He hasn't played with this new, in quotation marks, offensive line, because with Elflein in, with Brian O'Neill playing, because he's looked really good. And so I think the line is a little better than when he played. So I also wish that they would have kept Dalvin out and just let him rest, because Latavius has looked good. But what are you going to do? You got to kind of just grit your teeth and know that the Vikings are going to make bad decisions, and that's why we're Vikings fans.
That's right, exactly. That's a very Vikings move, and
that's why you're Vikings fans.
Yes, exactly. But the not so fast Holton Hill was wonderful. That was high quality stuff. I enjoyed that.
It's up there with my Everson Griffin 2 interceptions in the Super Bowl.
yes, it is. I would agree.
I don't think anybody could have predicted last week, though, that Green Bay would fumble against the Rams like they did.
No, and
cost them that game. So
I went on a rant on my podcast radio show. You guys should listen to it. I am irate about that, and I'm so glad that they got rid of Ty Montgomery, because that's a toxic locker room to come back to. Man.
Yeah, since we have you here, I wanted to ask, what are your thoughts on that move? And obviously we kind of know already, but also the Clinton Dix move. What do you think of all that?
As far as goes, because this is the easier one to talk about for me emotionally. They weren't going to re-sign him anyways. The Packers have a history of not re-signing defensive backs for a multitude of reasons, but a lot of times the Packers don't value them as much as maybe they should. They've been valuing their D-line a little bit more in recent years. They didn't re-sign Morgan Burnett years ago, or Devon House, or Tremont Williams. All those guys went elsewhere. It's funny that they all came back.
I was going to say, didn't they all return?
They did, after stints in the Chargers and Browns, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they just don't value it as much, and they know that they can get sort of older guys for cheaper, as opposed to, right after your rookie contract. And I don't blame them for not picking up the second contract on him. He would have been a pricey guy, and he's too inconsistent to really trust on a weekly basis. So I just, as far as that goes, I liked him. I liked it how he played, and I like what he did for our backfield. Not our backfield, our DBs. But I think he'll find a little bit more success elsewhere because of how the defensive schemes go in the Redskins. They've already been able to scheme it for like Josh Norman and stuff like that. So he's just a good addition over there. Yeah.
All right. Jordan, were you disappointed that the Vikings did not make a move? I mean, it would have been difficult for them to make a move at the trade deadline given their salary cap situation, but were you hoping that a move would be made?
I think like the Madden player in me was
Yeah.
a little disappointed.
Yes,
like,
man.
it's like, oh yeah, it's the trade deadline. Like trade Kirk Cousins right now.
Yes.
Get rid of him.
Yes.
I wanna see a big move. Like, but I don't know. I mean, not really, because I think we have a team in place that if we can just kind of get healthy in the bye week, I think we can. We have an elite roster. So I wasn't too disappointed that the Vikings didn't make a move. But I do just want to say, even though we're talking about the Vikings and the Packers, don't sleep on the Redskins. They now have the number 1 and number 2 safeties as graded by PFF on their team. So they have plus they have Josh Norman. I mean, they have a really good secondary, and they made it that much better. It's a similar situation, if not even better, than like whenever we picked up Joe Iloka, and people were like, "Oh yeah, this secondary was so good. Now it's better," and that's kind of what the Redskins have. So don't sleep on the Redskins. I'm afraid that we're going to have to play them in the playoffs, and I don't want to play them in the playoffs. They're a scary team to me right now.
Definitely. And, that division is not really those teams are not really doing anything to kind of separate themselves. And Washington, I mean, as the weeks go by, they sure seem like they have their stuff together the most. They look like the biggest threat going forward, do they not?
They just keep winning on the back of, the dinosaur known as Adrian Peterson. And it's working. I mean, it's, they're getting wins. They're beating their division opponents. And just watch out for Washington. That's a
yeah, man, they're good. I thought you nailed it with the Madden player in you. I feel like that is a huge thing that's happening now, and a huge reason for why people are saying what they're saying about like the offensive line or like Anthony Barr contract situation, et cetera, et cetera. I think Madden has done that to people because they think you can just go to the free agent pool and find another 78 offensive linemen, sign them, plug them in, and it's just going to be, better than the 76 that you let go, and that's not how the NFL works at all. But that's how.
Also, in the draft in Madden, you draft somebody that's a first round pick, they're going to be an 80 overall and they're going to be good. But the draft isn't that way. So people, I heard some rumor floating around trade Sendejo for a second round pick, and I was like, you idiots!
Yeah,
why
man,
would you do that?
That's what I'm saying, and it's like that's kind of the movement that it's like, oh no, God, what was the one that was? It was Trey Waynes and pick for somebody. It was just like I don't.
Patrick Peterson.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it was Patrick Peterson.
That was me who was all over Twitter saying that.
Oh man, I can't. That's like a Madden trade, And I get it, and I also want Madden to be in real life sometimes too. But I don't think that is an NFL trade that we would, normally see. But it is interesting, and I think good, for people to be more aware of what's available, as far as a free agent standpoint is concerned, and drafting in college. Prospects and whatever. I think it's good for fans to know more about that stuff, but I think in certain instances it can kind of, and I'm guilty of it too. I don't mean to exclude myself of it because I did want during the trade deadline, it's like, yeah, man, just do a baseball move, cut a deal, send a draft pick and get a guy, and it's like, well, you can't just do that, those guys aren't everywhere.
Yeah, I don't get too into Madden, but the salary cap in Madden is nothing like the real life salary cap. So you have to remember that the Vikings are in a stranglehold by that cap. We have $2 million, and then if we want more money, we have to restructure some deals, and that's who are you going to go to and be like, hey, take less money right now, so we can replace you or something. So I don't know.
That's a difficult thing to make happen. What were you going to say, Giotto?
Yeah, the Rams. They now have. I mean, that's basically what they've been doing all off season.
Yeah, it's just mad.
They're giving up picks and they're adding people, and they now have on their defensive line, including a linebacker, 2 defensive ends, whatever. They've got Aaron Donald, Ndamukong Suh, Dante Fowler, who they just got from the Jaguars, and I'm forgetting another guy. But basically 4 first-round picks over the last 5 years or 6 years
on their team
are now on their starters on their front defensive line. That
Absolutely
is the scariest
terrifying.
team in the history of football. It's
Oh
horrible.
my God,
It's
so
obviously
scary.
Terrible.
obviously the playoffs are going to have to go through the Rams, and it's just, oh man.
You know,
it's
only thing
scary.
that gives me hope there is because their home field situation is so goofy and it's so non-home team friendly. Like, maybe that'll change in the playoffs, but like that's the only thing that I can think that somebody could go in, bring a bunch of their fans, and maybe sneak a win out. Because when you just look at the teams on paper, it's hard to imagine the Rams losing at home.
The Packers almost did it last week.
They did.
They had a chance. Screw Ty
Almost.
Montgomery. So glad he's gone. Did I already mention that?
And you know what else? Can I talk real quick about? He was the character wearing
more
the
Packers
88
fans
in the
in that stadium.
backfield. Yeah,
There
that's
were
what
more
I'm saying.
Packers fans in that stadium than there were LA Rams fans.
Yeah.
That's because all the LA fans right now are in the Staples Center for the Lakers.
For LeBron.
Yeah, for LeBron and the Lakers. Like, they've got a sideshow over there.
For real.
So,
yeah.
If you look at the cap situation, like Los Angeles, they are not gonna be happy campos in 2 or 3 years, and it makes me think, like, are they trying to just put together an obvious Super Bowl roster, even if it means they're going to be bad for like 5 or 6 years down the line? Like, let's win now, so maybe we can get a fan base.
Yeah, would that be
like,
worth it? I mean,
was-
to certain
I'm
franchises, I'm sure it would be worth it, you know?
Yeah, I'm watching that Packers game last week, and my least favorite part about the Packers, like in playing them, is that dumb "Go Pack, go."
Yeah, I can't say
And
it.
I'm hearing it in Los Angeles, and I'm like, this is sad. Like, this is the best team in football right now. And their home stadium is infiltrated by cheeseheads. Like, what's going on?
Yeah, Packers fans do travel well.
They do,
but
yes.
as long as you're talking about horrible chants, Skull,
Oh, hey,
come
man.
on.
Okay. Hey. First of all, we have acknowledged that the skull chant has gotten a little bit out of control, and we're trying to pump the brakes, and we know it's maybe getting obnoxious.
I'd appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's going to give me a headache. I'm going to the Packers game on the 25th. And,
that'll be fun.
I'm not looking forward to that. Bringing
Although,
earplugs.
you know, like, the next, like, if we make the playoffs and win a playoff game, when Cousins goes to take the knee, the whole stadium is just going to be nothing but skull chants. And, like, whenever Vikings fans tend to travel decently, I think, especially last season in that Redskins game.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a skull chant going on at halftime because all the Redskins fans were like, "Oh, this is a blowout."
You know, there were a lot of successful away skull chants last year, and I was proud of that, and that was good. But I think we may have gotten a little ahead of ourselves with the skull chant. I think it might be time to bring it back a little bit. Well, all right, gentlemen, I'm going to call it because I got to get ready. I want to do my pizza thing before this football game starts. So thank you for joining me, for joining us. Thank you for listening, if you're listening. This has been the Purple Territory pregame show. We'll check you guys later.